What is up, guys? It is Kitsos from Coasterland, and welcome back to another Wooden Coasters Ranked video. This is part 3, number 60 through 46, and let's just dive right into it at the number 60 spot. We have Kingdom Coaster at Dutch Wonderland. Now, these top 60 are all fantastic rides. I don't really have any beef with any of them, just some are better than others. This one had some solid laterals, little bit of weak floater, but nothing really noticeable that much. I mean, it wasn't like strong airtime by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, this last helix had some solid laterals, so overall it had some decent forces and was a pretty awesome ride. So at the number 59 spot, we have, drumroll please, Racer at Kennywood. So Racer, I mean, the problem with Racer that I had, personally, was that it just didn't do it for me. It really didn't. I mean, what I mean by that is, it just wasn't that great a ride. It was the weakest racing coaster I've done, wooden racer that I've done, and it shows as the lowest ranked wooden racing coaster on this list. However, I mean, it was still a decent ride. It had one moment of good airtime, but that's the thing, it only had one moment of good airtime, and the racing element was not done that well in comparison to, say, a dueling coaster, which I guess is to be expected considering this opened, I believe, in 1927. So, I mean, I get it on one hand, but on another hand, they definitely could have done significantly better. The speed just isn't there. The intensity isn't there. And it is no wonder in my mind why this has the lowest height requirement out of any of the Kennywood Woodies. So at the number 58 spot, we have Racer at Kings Island. We basically have a trio of racing coasters going through the next couple spots and the last spot. And the Racer at Kings Island is no exception to that rule. It's a pretty solid wooden roller coaster. Nothing absolutely spectacular, but it isn't terrible either. I definitely would say that Racer could have been a little bit better. I think that basically you'll see later on this list the highest ranked racing coaster, and you'll understand why that is the highest ranked. It is also a defunct racing coaster, so that's something to note as well. Getting footage of it that's not in copyright might be a pain in the butt, but we'll deal with that in a little bit. That's not really for this video to be a problem with. That being said, Racer does the racing element reasonably well at first, and then of course it splits off into its separate tracks. They kind of go in different directions, and you don't really see the other train again until you're back in the station, which I think is unfortunate. I think maybe having it split off and then come back together on the inside of, back right next to each other again would have been a better design option. But to be fair, John C. Allen may have had trouble with them lining up properly had he done that. So that may have been the reasoning behind that decision. But, it's still, overall, it's still a solid racing experience. It's just nothing to write home about. It's got some good airtime as well, so that's good as well. I mean, it's definitely not a weak wooden roller coaster, but it's definitely not a particularly strong one either. I'd say it's like it is kind of in this ranking, mid-tier. So, moving on to the number 57 spot, we have King's Dominion's Racer 75. Now, the thing about Racer 75 that I really like is just the fact that it's got the classic feel. It's when it's actually dueling, which obviously in this clip it is not. In case you can't tell, it is not dueling in this clip because, King's Dominion sucks sometimes. It's fine. We deal with it. We put up with it. And while it doesn't feel as long as Racer at King's Island, just as a note, it definitely feels like it has better airtime. In my opinion, anyways, it definitely feels more airtime packed, even though it does feel a little bit shorter than King's Dominion's or King's Island's version, excuse me. Um, and also, you get a great view of I-305's lift hill on the outrun, and then that's always cool to see. And then you go back on the return run, and the same situation occurs, where once again you're kind of just not, you're just not getting the racing element really that well. I've noticed this is a common problem with the classic racing Woodies. You just don't get it as much. I will give Kennywood's Racer this. It does the dueling element a lot differently than these. It definitely has more side-by-side interaction, but it just wasn't executed very well on Kennywood's Racer. Here, executed mediocrely with some mediocrity, but it is what it is. Alright, so moving on to the number 56 spot, we have Thunderhawk, I believe PTC, is it PTC? I think it's PTC Woody at Dorney Park. So this Dorney Park Woody opened back in 1927, I believe, and is a pretty decent ride. I mean, it's not anything to write home about. It's not absolutely spectacular, but it is a pretty solid wooden coaster. Definitely would be better without all the trims that it is plagued with throughout the ride experience. Like, I'm telling you, this ride is trimmed to death, but it is what it is. You just deal with it because you don't really have much else of a choice. Like, for example, right there, you can see that trim hit a little bit, and then you got, those are obviously not trims, those are anti-rollbacks, but I believe there's a trim on that first hill coming up into the twister section, but I know that there's one right about, not this hill, but the next one right there, there's a trim that kills the momentum. I mean, overall, that's the problem with this ride that I have the biggest issue with, is the just trimming it to death. It's just rather unfortunate because I feel like that return run could be a lot better if it wasn't trimmed so heavily and repeatedly. I get they're trying to preserve the longevity of the track life, but come on, guys. Have some fun with it and just retrack it every few years like most normal people do. Well, anyways, moving on to number 55, we have Yankee Cannonball. Now, Yankee Cannonball was a disappointment and a letdown for me, probably because of the GCI retrack. I mean, let's face it, the GCI retrack probably ruined this ride. Wouldn't be the first time a GCI retrack has ruined a ride. It won't be the last. I mean, GCI does change profiling when they retrack a wooden coaster that's old. It's proven. It's done. It's whatever. You gotta live with it. And I know this did get a GCI retrack at some point, if I recall correctly. It was very smooth, don't get me wrong. And that was a positive, but the airtime was not what I was expecting based on what people have told me. And I think that the retrack had a huge part in that situation. I could be entirely wrong. It could have been airtimeless the whole time, and I just was talking to a bunch of crackpot fools, but the reality most likely is that I was not talking to a bunch of crackpot fools. They just wrote it before the retrack. So that's my guess, because the profiling just looks a little shallow on the hills compared to some of the older pictures. So I definitely think that is part of why this happened, this unfortunate experience. So moving on to the number 54 spot, we have Invader and my infamous side-by-side POV. Yep, it's a thing. It's annoying. I know. You guys will live. It's fine. It is screwed up really bad. It's fine. Anyways, Invader. So, as a GCI, you would expect it to be ranked higher on this list, but this is one of the more family-friendly GCIs. So, I mean, to be fair to Invader, it's not a bad ride or anything, but it definitely is more on the family-orientated side. It does offer some solid airtime, some solid laterals, but gosh, this ride is brutal. It is very rough for a relatively new GCI. I mean, I was kind of shocked, honestly. I believe it's like 2017 Invader opened, something like that. And geez, is it rough. Like, for example, this first turn, definitely a bumpy moment. And then it just goes downhill from there, both literally and figuratively, in terms of roughness. It definitely beats you up a little bit. Papa did not enjoy this at all. He was not a happy camper, we'll just put it that way. It just wasn't a good ride. It was not enjoyable, like on the same level as other GCIs. That being said, I mean, it isn't a terrible ride either. It's just a mediocre GCI, which does happen from time to time with their coasters, admittedly. So, I mean, no manufacturer is perfect, and this is no exception to that rule. This is really, in my opinion, one of GCI's worst coasters that they built, and probably their worst operating one now that Wildcat is gone from Hershey Park. So that's something to note as well, since that ride is gone. Yeah. So moving on to the number 53 spot, we have Comet at Great Escape. Now, Comet is a fantastic wooden coaster, which goes to show how many fantastic wooden coasters I've ridden, that it only ranks at the 53 spot. So, to be fair to Comet, though, it's an excellent wooden coaster that offers great airtime, great intensity, decent thrills overall, some laterals. It's just a fantastic Woody, and it does so many things right that I really wish I could rank it higher. The reality is, it's fast paced, it's smooth, it's got airtime, it's got everything you want in a wooden coaster, but it just does it at a lesser rate than some of the other rides on this list. Some of the more modern coasters and some of the more classic coasters just do it a little bit better than Comet. So this comes in at 53. But to be fair, as I said, the top 60, there's not really a bad ride in my top 60. And there's a variety of reasons that I rank them where they are. Comet, it just simply was great, but not great enough to be ranked higher. That's really what it is, which is why I think a lot of spots may shock some people coming up, including, I believe, our number 47 or 46 spot, which we'll be talking about today, will definitely shock some people. That's right, 46 spot, if I recall. So, at the number 52 spot, we have White Lightning. Now, White Lightning is a GCI wooden coaster. It is of the smaller variety. It is a bit bumpy. It definitely could use some more Titan track, I think. That would make it better. But it would also take it off this list if it goes more than 50% Titan track. So that's something to consider as well. But yeah, as you can see, it has some solid lighting packages. This is a nighttime POV I filmed because, to be fair, I only ever seem to visit Fun Spot Orlando at night. Been there 3 times, I believe, at this point, and I just always seem to hit it up at night. It just seems to be the traditional way of doing things for this park for me. So, it is what it is. I mean, I probably won't ever get a daytime POV from here, or if I do, it won't be for a while, so I don't have plans to return to Florida for a little bit at least. Although those plans can always change. We all know how drastically different things are with Coasterland. Things just happen, it is what it is. But yeah, that was our number 52 spot. I like White Lightning. It's a solid ride. It's just, smaller and not as long as some of the other rides on this list, which is a huge part of why it ranks so low. if it was longer and kept the intensity the whole way, I definitely could see it ranking higher. Alright, at the number 51 spot, we have Great American Scream Machine just missing the top 50 at Six Flags Over Georgia. So the last remaining wooden coaster in the park after Georgia Cyclone probably thankfully closed, although I never got to ride it, so I'm not sure. We were left with Great American Scream Machine. Now, this would have ranked in the bottom 10, actually, at one point at its roughest, but after its recent retrack, fantastic ride. I don't believe this POV is from that retracking. I dug this one up because it was a front row. But when it did get fully retracked, wow, this ride got smooth. And it got really, really just fantastic airtime. It had better sense of speed. It was just an overall better experience, which is why it ends up higher on this list than it would have been prior to that retrack, because it was brutal previously. Here you can see some of that bumpiness. It's really the sudden jolts that act like a unwanted chiropractor to your back that definitely were a problem. I mean, like, it really was like getting chiropracted in a non-consensual way, I guess, would be how I would put it. Like, you didn't consent to this treatment, and then they just whack you in the back or something. That's what it felt like. And that trim still hits, but I found out after the retrack that trim didn't seem to hit it as hard. So, yeah, something to note. Now, that stop is the least pleasant part of the ride. It slams you to a stop and gut punches you just for one good measure, and that it still does, but you know, it is what it is. So, moving on to the number 50 spot is Lightning Racer Lightning. So, I ranked them separately, and here's why. Lightning Racer Lightning I found to be just a little, even though they're the same layout, technically just opposite of each other or something or whatever. However Mike Boodley did it, he's a genius. I don't even understand this ride, it just works, so I don't really care. You know, it works, so if it works, it works. But like, the reality is I just can't really describe it, but I found the lightning side to be a little weaker. I don't know what it was, but I definitely preferred the thunder side. Found the lightning side to have weaker airtime, just a little bit, weaker forces. It wasn't drastic, but it was noticeable. So I think that's really the thing that really influenced my decision here, was just the weaker forces. Don't get me wrong, both sides are pretty great rides, I would say. But I definitely think that Lightning Racer could use a retrack because both sides have gotten a little bit rougher over the years. I mean, it's not terrible, it's not Wildcat level, but it definitely is noticeable that they are getting quite bumpy. So I think a full retrack of both rides would be fantastic. I don't know if Hershey really wants to do that so soon after so many massive investments, re-themes, and a couple other things that they've done. I'm not sure if they're really looking to do that, but if it is in the cards, I would love to see it. So moving on to the number 49 spot is, of course, Lightning Racer Thunder. So Thunder is slightly better, as I said, in my opinion. I think it's just a better ride, just ever so slightly, with some better forces. Just, you know, my personal opinion. Don't have to agree with it. And let me know in the comments if you think Lightning is better, if you think Thunder is better, if you think they're both the same. Like, what do you think about Lightning Racers? Just give me your thoughts. And any of the other rides on this list. Like, if there's anything that you see and you're like, hey, I experienced this, this is my thoughts, please definitely comment that down below. But yeah, Lightning Racers Thunder is the right lift hill, as you can see. The left lift hill is Lightning, and it's an overall good experience. So, Yeah, sorry, I got distracted. Anyways, the point is, Lightning Racer Thunder. I'm just gonna let it roll for a little bit, um, because I've kind of given the description, or really, the forces are just slightly better. That's really the point. So I'm going to cut the clip here, and we'll move on. So moving on, we have the number 48 spot, which is Roar at Six Flags America. Now, Roar is not a bad ride at all, in my opinion. I find it to be quite enjoyable. A bit bumpy, yes, but really gets way too much hate for, like, no reason. I find it to be forceful, classic GCI that offers some decent airtime, some decent laterals, and just an overall well-rounded ride experience. The first drop is solid, and the rest of the ride gets better and better as it goes, getting lower and lower to the ground. I think overall, Roar gets way, 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 way too much hate. Like, come on, guys. Like, you gotta love a classic wooden coaster, and a lot of the GCIs don't fit that bill. But with a ride as old as Roar, believe 98, it's starting to get into that territory as a classic GCI. And to be fair, it's, one of the few remaining classic GCIs. Wildcat's been RMC'd, the other Roar's been RMC'd. These older GCIs have been RMC'd or torn down, like Ozark Wildcat, for example. And, like, it's just a sad situation because, honestly, Mike Boodley, the original designer for GCI, did some great rides, and it shows in this layout. Is it the best GCI? No, obviously not. There are higher GCIs on this list, but it definitely holds its own among a crowded field. So, at the number 47 spot, we have Cannonball at Lake Winnipesaukee. Now, let's just say Lake Winnie for short, because nobody wants to repeatedly say Lake Winnipesaukee. I mean, come on, nobody really wants to do that, right? But the point is, Cannonball is a hidden gem, and I really do mean a hidden gem. Like, nobody goes to this park. Nobody goes to this park. Like, it's one of the most remote parks, really, you can go to in the United States, because there's not particularly a ton around it. I mean, Dollywood's a few hours away, so I guess you could make it a trip down from Dollywood. But, like, it's in, like, Chattanooga, Tennessee region. Like, it's just south of the border in Georgia. So, I mean, like, it's just really a remote park and a remote coaster. And, wow, I wish it wasn't so far out of the way. I'd go here every year. It's that good, this wooden coaster. It's really fun. It's got some great airtime. It is absolutely ridiculously smooth. Like, I mean, it's too smooth almost for a wooden coaster. It actually hurts the ride experience because there's no real bumpy character with it. But overall, it's just a fantastic ride. And it's also the first ride that I've ever seen delayed opening because they had to grease the turns. I've never experienced that before, so that's something to note. Now at the number 46 spot, this is going to get me nuked in the comment section. It is Mystic Timbers. Yes, I know. All the Mystic Timbers fanboys out there, I get it. For you, it's a great ride. But for me, it was a great ride. I agree. It's a solid GCI. But that's exactly what it is. A solid but highly overrated GCI. I just didn't find this to be that good compared to some of the others I've done. I just didn't. And I'm sorry if that hurts some feelings and ruffles some feathers because I know this is a very popular ride among enthusiasts. I just didn't really understand the hype by the time I was done riding it. I was like, man, I want to be in love and call this one of the best wooden coasters in the world, but I'm just not seeing it. I would love to experience it that way. Like, I would love for my opinion to change, and I'm going to give it another opportunity. It's not like I'm going to go to Kings Island and not ride Mystic Timbers. It's still a solid wooden coaster, and I still would like to get a ride every time I go to Kings Island, which is not all that often, but it is often enough so that, I go every couple years. So, yeah, I would like to definitely get another ride on this, and maybe my opinion will change. But as of now, definitely not it for me in terms of being the best GCI. It really isn't to me. So that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please click that like button down below and stay tuned for part 4 of this, which will be numbers 45 through 31, then part 5 and 6 following, including part 6 being the finale, including the top 15 wooden coasters I've ridden. This is a controversial list, and it only gets a little bit more controversial as we go, although a lot of spots will also make sense. But overall, I just appreciate you watching, and like, comment, subscribe, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Peace, guys.